I still remember the day the skies turned red. Not from sunset, not from warplanes, from them. People thought it was some atmospheric glitch at first, something solar. But when the clouds started to shimmer and hum, like they were vibrating with something alive, we knew it wasn't earthly. A tear opened above us, like the sky was being sliced with a blade. And from it, they came. They weren't monsters, not at first glance. No tentacles, no teeth, no acid. They came in sleek, black vessels that didn't make a sound. Hundreds of them. Then thousands. They hovered, cold and still, above every major city like vultures waiting for a meal to rot. I was in Detroit. A mechanic. Nothing special. Just another guy who knew how to tear apart broken metal and put it back together. My girl had left 2 months before. Said I wasn't ambitious. Said the world was moving and I was standing still. Then the world stopped moving altogether. No warning, no message, no demands. The first strike came without a sound. One of their ships fired this pulsing beam. Not a laser, more like a focused storm, right into downtown Chicago. The buildings didn't explode. They evaporated. Turned into ash that never hit the ground. Just drifted up like reverse snow. The news didn't know what to say. The governments were frozen. And then, finally, a transmission came through. Not from Earth, from them. It was translated into every language at once. Cold, robotic, arrogant. This planet has been evaluated. Resistance is obsolete. Surrender is advised. You are to be restructured for productive assimilation. Assimilation? They didn't come for resources. Not oil, not gold, not water. They came for us. And they thought they were doing us a favor. Over the next 48 hours, half the planet fell. Entire countries were blacked out. Not destroyed. Just shut off. Like someone hit a switch. I remember sitting in the back of my shop, listening to the silence outside. No cars, no planes, no people, just that hum in the sky. And then I heard the scream. A kid, maybe 12, running down the street barefoot, clothes ripped, bleeding from the arm. Behind him, one of their drones floated down, not flying fast, just cruising like it already knew the outcome. It reached for him. I grabbed my wrench. Stupid. Pointless. But I ran outside anyway. When I got between the drone and the kid, it paused. Scanned me. I saw its eye. A red lens glowing with contempt. Like it couldn't even process why a human with a metal tool would stand in its way. So I threw it. The wrench bounced off its shell. Worthless. The drone charged something, some kind of weapon, and I braced for heat. But the shot never came. From behind, a gunshot rang out. Old school, 12 gauge. Someone on the rooftop had blown the thing's lens clean off. The drone sparked, shook, and dropped like dead metal. That was the moment everything shifted. The kid was safe. I was alive. And the drone, their perfect little machine, was scrap on the concrete. A few more neighbors came out, some with old rifles. A vet down the street had a flamethrower rigged out of a pressure washer. One guy had a damn crossbow. That night, Detroit burned, but not from their weapons, from ours. We set traps, lit their scouts on fire, tore them apart with everything we had. Humans are dumb sometimes, but never when we're pissed. Never when our backs are to the wall. And for the first time since their invasion began, we made them retreat. They didn't expect resistance. They didn't expect Detroit. They didn't expect the rage of a species that's clawed its way up from stone to silicon by sheer willpower. The next morning, we found a message burned into the pavement under one of their dead vessels. Error. We buried our first dead behind the shop that morning. 5 bodies, wrapped in bed sheets, no prayers, just dirt. I didn't know their names. A couple of them were barely recognizable after what the drones had done to them. But they died fighting. That was all that mattered now. The kid, the one I'd stepped in front of. His name was Caleb. Just 12 years old, and already saw more death than a soldier in the trenches. He sat beside me on the curb, both of us covered in dust and dried blood. We didn't speak for a while. What was there to say? Everything we knew, our jobs, our plans, our little routines, it was gone. Burned up in the sky. "You think they're coming back tonight?" he asked, voice quiet. "They will," I said. "They're not used to being told no." And that was the truth. These aliens, whatever they called themselves, they came in with the attitude of gods, cold, calculated, efficient. They didn't rage or threaten like villains in a movie. No, they talked like engineers, as if we were a broken system they were just here to fix. But we weren't broken. We were just angry. Word spread fast. By noon, I was standing in the garage surrounded by a dozen men and a few women, people I'd known for years but never really talked to. Now they were armed with baseball bats, shotguns, crowbars, makeshift bombs made from propane tanks. One guy had converted a pickup truck into a mobile spike trap. Said he used to work demolition before things went sideways. It was chaos. But it was our chaos. No military, no police. Just civilians in work boots and ripped jeans building resistance out of scrap. "I heard Philly went dark last night," said Rick, a trucker with one eye. "No word, nothing. Like they were erased." "Same with Kansas City," said another. "They're wiping places clean like chalkboards." We didn't have satellite feeds or tactical maps, just rumors, panic, and some old ham radios that miraculously still worked. I managed to patch into one and picked up scattered signals, resistance pockets forming all over Austin, Boise, even Anchorage. Humanity wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. That afternoon, we got our first look at what they really were. Caleb was the one who found it, a half-alive invader crawling from a wrecked drone transport we'd downed the night before. It looked humanoid but lean, long, with pale gray skin that shimmered in sunlight like glass. No mouth, just eyes, huge, black, soulless. It bled green. "Don't kill it yet," I said, as someone raised a tire iron. "Let's learn something first." We dragged it into the back of the shop and tied it up with jumper cables and chains. I didn't expect it to talk. It didn't. But when I stared into its eyes, it was like looking into a machine that was still processing a glitch. "This is war to them," said Marvin, one of the old-timers from down the block. "But not the way we know it. To them, war's just cleanup. They've never had to fight." "They're about to learn," I said. That night, we built traps. We lured drones with noise and took them down with jury-rigged EMPs made from microwave parts. We turned metal shops into armories. We burned their fallen machines and left the scraps hanging from streetlights, warnings in a language we hoped they understood. We bite back. But still, they came. The second wave hit just after midnight. I was on the roof with Caleb, using binoculars I'd taken off a dead cop. We saw the ships coming from the north, 3 of them, low, silent, moving in a triangle. "Everyone down!" I shouted into the walkie. The first ship dropped a pod the size of a house. It hit the street like a meteor, blowing out windows and tossing cars. And from it came them. Not the drones this time, not machines. These were soldiers, real ones. 7 feet tall, armor like liquid metal. Rifles that didn't shoot bullets or beams. They released something worse. A pulse that made your muscles seize and your bones scream. We lost 5 people in the first minute. They didn't even get to aim, but we had learned. One of our traps went off, a tripwire connected to an old gas line. The explosion turned 2 of the soldiers into screaming, melting statues. And then hell broke loose. I ran with Caleb, ducking behind wrecked cars, firing off a hunting rifle. It barely dented their armor, but it slowed them. That was all we needed. Marvin, bless the old bastard, drove his spike truck right into one of them. The impact killed him, but the alien went down with him, half its body crushed under the engine block. I got close enough to toss a Molotov at another. The flames didn't kill it outright, but it screamed. An awful, screeching sound, and staggered. Caleb shot it in the back of the head with a stolen pistol. The kid never missed. And then they retreated again. Not because we killed them all. No, we didn't. They left because they didn't understand us. We were supposed to surrender, collapse, die quietly. But we were loud. We were furious. We were human. They didn't know what to do with that. By sunrise, Detroit's resistance was down to maybe 40 people, out of thousands. But we stood, bloodied, broken, alive. The alien prisoner was gone, self-terminated maybe, or extracted. I found a smear of that green blood near the chains, and scorch marks on the wall. They didn't want us learning from it. Too late. We already had. We knew how they fought. We knew how they moved. And most importantly, we knew that they feared unpredictability. The galaxy saw Earth as a backwater mudball with savages still arguing over borders and skin color. But what they didn't get was that those same savages could build nukes out of trash, make fire from nothing, and turn grief into fury so hot it could burn gods. We weren't united. We weren't even organized. But we were survivors. And there's nothing more dangerous than a survivor who's got nothing left to lose. Caleb sat beside me again, sipping water like it was whiskey. I want to kill them all, he said, not blinking. You will, I told him, one by one. We didn't talk about the dead anymore. No time. We carried them in silence and buried them without names. All that mattered was the living. By the third day, other groups started reaching out. Detroit Resistance, this is Echo Base from Cleveland. You guys still kicking? Barely, I replied. But we're still here. Good. We've got weapons. You've got numbers. Let's make them regret this. For the first time since the invasion, there was hope. Not the kind you read in books. Not shiny, brave hope. This was bitter, jagged, vengeful hope. The kind that smells like smoke and sounds like a scream. We weren't fighting to win yet. That came later. Right now, we were fighting to make them hurt. To remind the stars that Earth isn't a planet you invade. It's a graveyard waiting to happen. 3 days after they hit Detroit, I stopped calling this a war. Wars are fought between sides that understand each other. Soldiers, rules, objectives. This wasn't that. This was slaughter, cold and calculated from their side, savage and chaotic from ours. And we were finally starting to understand something. They didn't come to conquer, they came to erase. I don't know what made Earth so interesting to them. Maybe it was resources, maybe location, maybe we were just next on some cosmic checklist. But whatever their reason, they didn't see us as people. They didn't even see us as animals. We were just noise. And they came to mute us. But we screamed louder. After Cleveland contacted us, more signals came through. Faint ones, scratchy through static. But they were real. Pittsburgh, torn to hell but still breathing. A mountain crew out of Tennessee. Miners turned snipers. Even a rogue Navy crew in the Gulf, floating on a hijacked destroyer. The pieces were scattered, but we were starting to find each other. Meanwhile, Detroit, or what was left of it, turned into something else. We called it the Pit. Not a city anymore. A trap. A living wound that bled metal and hate. We made the ruins work for us. Set up kill zones in collapsed buildings. Funneled patrols into ambushes using collapsed highways. One group planted car alarms all over the downtown sector and rigged them to propane tanks. The invaders started avoiding certain blocks completely. We didn't just fight. We adapted. I was sitting on a broken escalator inside what used to be a shopping mall when the idea first hit me. Caleb was fiddling with a busted drone core we'd salvaged. He had it open like a frog in biology class, wires and circuits hanging out, green gunk dripping from the internal battery. Most people would have called it junk. The boy saw potential. "These things," he said, "they talk to each other wirelessly." "Yeah," I muttered. So, what if we could talk back?" That changed everything. A day later, we had a tech team. Not professionals, just anyone who knew how to code, hack, or even solder without setting themselves on fire. Together, we cracked part of the invaders' comm grid. It wasn't full language, more like signals. Patterns. But that was enough. We hijacked their signal. First thing we sent back was a looped message. "You picked the wrong planet," in every human language, with gunfire in the background. The next day, their patrols came in blind, disoriented, slower. We'd injected noise into their network. By the time the third wave came, they were walking into coordinated ambushes without realizing it, but they learned fast. The fourth wave didn't use soldiers or drones. It used us. We were in the middle of setting up another trap in the east sector when we heard gunfire that didn't sound alien, automatic rifles, explosives, screams in English. I rushed to the street and saw a sight that chilled me to the bone. Men in black armor, not alien metal, human armor, real-world gear. But their faces were blank, their eyes empty, their movements wrong, like puppets. Then I saw one of them hesitate when a flashbang went off. He dropped to his knees and screamed. And in that scream was something I hadn't heard since the first day. Fear. Real, human fear. "Help me!" he cried out, clawing at his helmet. "I can't stop!" One of his squad mates turned and shot him in the head. No hesitation. That's when we realized what we were facing. They'd taken prisoners. They weren't just killing us. They were rewiring us. Turning humans into weapons. We pulled back. Lost 3 more people that night, not to aliens, to our own. One was a guy I knew. Andre, former Marine. Gone for days. Came back a goddamn puppet. We had to make a new rule. If they disappear, they don't come back. I gave that order myself. Caleb looked at me like I'd just murdered hope. "Even if it's someone you love," I said, "if they're gone longer than a day, they're not them anymore." He didn't respond, just nodded and kept working on his drone jammer. A week passed. The pit turned into a beacon, not for survivors, but for a message, a symbol. That Earth wasn't just resisting. We were retaliating. One night, I sat on a broken rooftop with a man from Chicago, said he used to be a surgeon before the world ended. Now he built bombs out of oxygen tanks and power drills. He looked out over the burning blocks and asked, "You think they know what they started?" I shook my head. "They still think this is a cleanup job," I said. "They haven't felt hate yet." We made them feel it the next day. We launched our first real assault. Up until now, we'd just been reacting, hitting patrols, blowing up scouts. But this time, we went after them. There was a known relay point just outside the city. Some kind of command drone hub where their data linked before it hit orbit. Took us 2 weeks to track it, another 3 days to find a way in. The plan was simple. Sneak in, plant a virus we'd pieced together from their own tech, blow the place sky high. Nothing ever goes to plan. We approached through the sewers, old maintenance tunnels half collapsed from the first attacks, smelled like rot and rust. We had 12 in our crew. By the time we reached the hub, we had 10. 2 of us tripped a motion scanner and were liquefied by heat pulses so fast their screams never finished. But we got in. The inside was quiet. Too quiet. No guards, no movement. I should have known. The virus chip was inserted into their terminal. Caleb did it himself, hands shaking but steady. He looked at me once after it was done. Said nothing. We planted charges. timed for 2 minutes. Then we heard it. The sound of hundreds of boots, metallic, precise, marching. They let us in. They wanted us in. The relay started pulsing. It wasn't a hub. It was a trap. We had to move. I grabbed Caleb and ran. We lost more people covering our escape. Screams echoing behind us. Gunfire, pulse cannons, dust and blood. We made it out with 4 bodies and 2 living. But the charges went off. The relay lit up the sky like Judgment Day. And something changed. The next day, we intercepted a new signal. Their network wasn't silent anymore. It was panicked. We heard alien frequencies bouncing, fast and erratic. Coordinated attacks dropped in frequency. Their ships stopped clustering in our skies. They started pulling back. And then we saw it. One of their orbital platforms burned up in the sky, crashing down like a meteor. We didn't do that. Someone else did. That same night, we got a garbled message from the Navy crew out in the Gulf. Aliens, fighting each other, not all on the same side. That was the moment we realized Earth wasn't just a battlefield anymore. It was a spark. We didn't know what the hell was going on up there, but something fractured, something cracked. And whatever came next, it was going to be worse, because if aliens were divided, that meant 2 things. 1, not all of them agreed on wiping us out. 2, the ones that did just lost patience. I hadn't slept more than an hour in days. The nights were filled with gunfire and air trembling from low-orbit pressure waves. Even when it was quiet, the silence felt wrong. Not peace, anticipation. The kind of quiet you get before something horrible kicks in a door. Detroit, or what we still called the pit, was changing. Not growing, not healing. No, it was mutating. The survivors who remained weren't just scavengers or rebels anymore. We'd become something else, smarter, meaner, united, but not in speeches or flags, in pain. You could see it in the eyes of the people walking around with flamethrowers built out of fuel tanks and hairspray cans. Or the way we no longer waited for attacks. We hunted them. But even through that blood-thick haze of survival, something new crept in. Doubt. It started the morning after we blew up their relay hub. I was standing over a half-disassembled drone, mapping out its power node with Caleb. He was quiet. Not the focused kind of quiet. The thinking too hard kind. "You believe that message from the Gulf was real?" he asked, not looking up. "You saw the orbital crash. Something knocked their platform down." "Yeah, but what if it wasn't them fighting each other?" I raised an eyebrow. "Then who the hell was it?" He finally looked up. "What if we're not alone out here?" That hit me harder than I expected. We'd spent all our fight focused on them, the invaders, the arrogant bastards who looked at Earth like a roach nest to be sprayed and sterilized. But we'd never stopped to consider one thing. If they were part of a larger system, who else was watching? Later that night, our ham operator picked up something new. It wasn't a distress call or an alien threat. It was a signal, weak, digital, complex. Not like the invaders' frequency. This was layered, encrypted, but human-like. I stayed up with 2 of our techs trying to decode it. Took hours, maybe longer. I couldn't feel time anymore. Days blurred, nights blurred harder. We broke the code around dawn. The message wasn't long. "We see your resistance. We recognize your defiance. Await contact." It repeated 3 times. Then silence. No coordinates. No source. Just that. We sat around the radio like it was a goddamn Ouija board. Nobody said it, but we were all thinking the same thing. Someone else was watching Earth fight. And they liked what they saw. I couldn't sit still after that. None of us could. The invaders didn't attack for 2 full days after the relay was destroyed. That had never happened before. Every quiet hour felt like the air was shrinking around us, like something big was winding up in the dark. And then, it happened. Midnight, exactly. The sky opened. Not like before, with the usual shimmering rips. This was different. Colder. Controlled. A single ship came through. It didn't hover over the city. It descended slow and precise until it touched down outside the pit, barely a mile from our closest barricade. It didn't look like the others. The usual invader ships were sleek, black, and pulsing with eerie light. This one was blocky, heavy, like it was built for war, not patrol. The silence was worse than anything. I gathered everyone I trusted, fighters, techs, scouts, Caleb. We made a decision that could have gotten us all killed. We were going to approach it. 10 of us walked toward the ship, armed to the teeth but not aiming. I led the group, my boots crunching gravel that hadn't been walked on since the first bombardment. Every step felt like a dare. When we got within 30 feet, something hissed, steam jetted from beneath the ship, and a door opened. Not a ramp. A door, like a vault, sliding to the side. No lights, no invitation, just a hallway, black and silent. I looked back once at Caleb. He didn't say anything, but his eyes were locked on mine. "Go," they said. So I did. The air inside smelled sterile, like hospitals used to. The lights were dim, but enough to see where I was going. The others followed, weapons raised but steady. We passed through 2 corridors before reaching a chamber, and that's where we met. It. It looked like them, but it wasn't. Same gray skin, same black eyes, but its posture was different. Looser, not rigid like the invaders. Its armor wasn't weaponized. Its face showed expression. It studied us, not with superiority, but with calculation. It raised one hand, palm up, not threatening, not begging, signaling. Then it spoke, in English. "Your planet bleeds, but it screams in a way no other has." None of us said a word. Not yet. "I am not your enemy," it continued, "but I am not your savior. I come with warning, and with choice." I finally stepped forward. "You better talk fast." It nodded, slightly. There are many who roam the stars. Some build, some destroy, and some harvest. The ones who came to your world are harvesters, not conquerors. Not warriors. They do not expect resistance. It does not exist in their model. "Yeah," I said. "We noticed. But your kind is different. And now, others have noticed too." I didn't like the sound of that. "Who are you?" I asked. It paused for a moment, then said, "A mistake, one they left behind. I have no name. My kind was designed, discarded, forgotten. A defector. A rogue. Something in between. Whatever it wasn't lying. The relay you destroyed disrupted their hive net. It exposed gaps in their hive, weaknesses they thought irrelevant. You are unpredictable, emotional, diseased." "Thanks," I muttered. "It terrifies them." That made us straighten up. "We're not just fighting for Earth anymore, are we?" I asked. "No," it said. "You are fighting to prove that unpredictability can survive in a clean galaxy." "And not everyone wants that?" "Who's watching? Others, some curious, some afraid, but all aware." It turned then, gesturing to a console behind it. A flick of its hand brought up a star map, constellations I didn't recognize. But one pulsed red. Earth. Dozens of others pulsed blue. "You are not alone anymore," it said, "but whether that is salvation as on order or extinction is not my choice." The screen blinked. Earth's red dot was now surrounded, not invaded, encircled. And then it looked at me again, with eyes too black to read. "They're coming. Not just your harvesters, others, to observe, to test, to provoke. You've become a variable, a threat." "Good," I said. "You misunderstand," it replied. "They will not come to save you. They will come to judge you." A heavy silence fell between us. Then, with a motion like swiping air, the creature shut the map down. "I will leave you now," it said, "but not without gift." From a drawer, it pulled out a crystal-like shard, humming faintly. It handed it to me, fingers steady. "This is a seed, data, weapon, proof. Use it as you see fit." "What's the catch?" I asked. It stared hard into me. "Use it, and the others will hear you." Then it walked past us and disappeared into a side corridor, gone like mist. We returned to the pit, carrying a crystal that buzzed like it had a heartbeat, and a message that tasted like poison. We weren't just fighting for Earth anymore. We were fighting in front of an audience, and the galaxy had just tuned in. We spent the next 2 days staring at that damn crystal like it was alive. It didn't glow, didn't blink, didn't move, but it hummed, a low, constant vibration in your bones. You couldn't hear it, but you felt it, like it was watching, waiting. And the more we stared, the more it stared back. It sat on a metal table in the center of our new bunker, surrounded by our best minds. Not scientists, not anymore. Those people were gone, dead or taken. What we had now were scavengers, tinkerers, coders, former mechanics, ex-military signalmen, and a 15-year-old kid who once built a drone jammer out of a toaster. It was Caleb who finally cracked the outer layer. "It's not a weapon," he muttered, sweat dripping off his nose, fingers twitching across a scavenged touchscreen rig. "It's worse." "Define worse," I said from across the room, arms crossed. "It's a transmitter, a silent one, quantum-based. It doesn't send out noise. It sends out identity." I stepped closer. "Identity?" "It's a beacon," he said. "Whoever sent it wants us to use it so the rest of the galaxy knows exactly where we are, what we've done, and what we're becoming." "Becoming?" He turned and looked me dead in the eyes. "A problem." I won't lie, every instinct told me to smash that crystal into dust. We were finally making the bastards bleed, and now we had this alien wildcard sitting in the heart of our bunker, threatening to draw in even more enemies. But the truth was, we were already exposed. Earth wasn't some secret corner of the universe anymore. We weren't just defending ourselves, we were on display, and sooner or later somebody would come knocking to see what the noise was all about. So we made a choice. We activated the beacon, not because we were desperate or dumb, but because it was time to stop hiding. We weren't the underdogs anymore. We were the warning. The transmission took less than a second, a pulse so deep and wide it skipped past normal space-time channels and launched straight into the dark. I didn't feel it. None of us did, but out there, someone did. Hours later, our orbit burned again. But this time, it wasn't them. The object slammed into the ocean with the force of 1,000 bombs, far west, off the coast of California. The wave reached as far as Vegas, but it wasn't natural. No earthquake, no debris, just steam. Like the ocean had been punched by a god and told to hush. We didn't know what it was, and we couldn't get close. The heat killed drones. The radiation fried our sensors. But we knew one thing. Whatever just landed, it wasn't from the same species as our harvesters. 2 days later, things got worse. The invaders came back, but not with patrols. Not with scouts. They dropped a ship straight into the pit. No warning, no scan. Just boom! A crater in the middle of our street, and the ship parked like it owned the place. And they sent someone new. It looked human, almost. Tall, lean, and wrapped in a black armored skin that moved like silk. No eyes, just a visor that shifted with the light. Its voice was distorted, mechanical, and cruel. "You were given a choice," it said, standing in the crater while our fighters aimed rifles and flamethrowers from the rooftops. "You've chosen extinction." I stood on the edge of the blast zone, rifle slung over my back. I didn't raise it. Not yet. We didn't choose anything, I said. You came to our home. You were marked for refinement, not destruction, the creature replied. But you have made yourselves inconvenient, and you've made yourselves vulnerable. Its head tilted slightly. You are not a threat. You are an error. Funny, I said. That's what your dead soldiers said before we burned them. It moved fast. Too fast. Blinked from the crater's center to just a few feet in front of me in a flash of static. Caleb nearly shot it. I raised my hand, held him back. This thing wasn't here to kill. It was here to threaten. You've activated a forbidden signal, it said. This is not permitted under the neutrality codes. You are not authorized to reach beyond your sphere. Sphere? I scoffed. You mean this rock you tried to erase? This rock was classified as unworthy of sentient status. You were meant to die quietly. Well, I smiled bitterly, we don't do quiet. The being leaned in close. The galaxy will come now, not to save you, to erase you completely. Then it vanished, gone, like smoke sucked into a vent, the ship with it. 1 second there, the next, empty air. We stood there for a long time, silent, breathing smoke, swallowing fear. It was Caleb who finally broke it. We just got promoted from infestation to contagion. And that was exactly it. They weren't just trying to kill us now, they were trying to quarantine us. The next attack wasn't global, it was surgical. They targeted resistance leaders. Echo Base in Cleveland, gone in a flash of white light. The Navy crew in the Gulf, radio silence, then a crater. The mountain fighters in Tennessee, ambushed by a swarm of drones loaded with biological toxins that melted flesh on contact. One by one, they cut the head off every snake, except us. We weren't the biggest or the best, but we were loud, and we were still standing. The pit became a fortress. We reinforced underground tunnels, converted water plants into weapon factories. We rigged the entire city block with explosives and let them know it. You come again, we broadcast on every channel, and we'll bring the whole damn city down with you. They listened, but only for a little while. Because on the 10th day after the beacon was activated, the sky broke again. This time the ships weren't black. They were silver, sleek, bright as lightning and silent as a grave. And they didn't attack. They hovered. 4 ships, shaped like blades, sat above 4 ruined cities. No weapons, no movement, just watching. The message came an hour later. Not from a radio, not from our channels, from our minds. Caleb dropped to his knees first, screaming, clutching his head. Then the rest of us heard it, inside, not with ears, with thought. Observation initiated. Violence will not be tolerated. You have summoned judgment. Remain in place. I collapsed in the street, vision spinning, chest heaving. The message wasn't loud, but it felt like it rewired your brain while whispering. We didn't know who they were, but they weren't harvesters. They were something worse. Judges, and they were watching. That night, I sat on the edge of a rooftop, legs dangling over a 6-story drop, watching the silver ships glint in the starlight. Beside me, Caleb sat quietly, hands still trembling. We did this, he whispered. No, I said. They did this when they thought we were weak. We just made them regret it. He nodded, but didn't look convinced. You think we'll survive this? He asked. I looked up at the sky, where alien gods now watched a burning world full of broken humans and refused corpses. We survived the first shot. We'll survive the last. He was quiet again, then said something I didn't expect. I don't want revenge anymore. I turned to him. I want reminders. Reminders. That we were here, that we mattered, that we fought. Even if they wipe us out. I want them to remember. Forever. I grinned. Then we'd better make this ending loud. And that's exactly what we did. The first time we used Earth as a weapon, it wasn't planned. It was grief, it was anger, and it was beautiful. It happened in the dead zone between what used to be St. Louis and the ashes of Indianapolis. Somewhere in the forgotten Midwest, where nothing lived anymore except wild dogs, empty sky, and the bones of cities. We called it the Burn Belt. Our recon squad had been tracking a new kind of invader transport, a giant, angular monstrosity that hovered low and slow, sweeping through territories and harvesting anything with a pulse. Not destroying, collecting. People. We didn't know why they'd shifted tactics again, but we sure as hell weren't going to let it pass unchallenged. So we sent a message. The kind of message you carve into stone with blood. We took a team of 20, loaded up 6 modified semis with old fuel tankers rigged to explode, and buried them along an old rail line that the ship's path crossed every 6 hours. Timing had to be perfect. So did the bait. We used one of our own. Gino, ex-con, volunteered. Had a broken leg and a bullet in the hip from a firefight 3 days earlier. Said he wouldn't survive the week anyway. We tried to talk him out of it. He told us to go to hell, laughed, and lit a cigarette with hands that didn't shake. "I've never died for anything worth a damn," he said. "Might as well try now." We tied him to a post at the center of the trap, hooked him up to a heartbeat monitor wired into the charge rig. The ship's scanners would detect the pulse and slow down to investigate. That was the plan. It worked. The transport drifted in on a low hum, like a mechanical ghost. 30 meters tall, twice as long. No visible weapons. It didn't need them. The thing stopped, just hovered there above Gino, bathing him in a column of green light. We waited. Not breathing, not moving. Then Gino smiled and said something into the mic. "Go to hell." Then his heart stopped. The rig lit up the earth like Judgment Day. Fire leapt into the sky. The entire railway became a furnace. Shockwaves flattened trees 5 miles out, and when it cleared, the transport wasn't just destroyed, it was vaporized, gone. The crater it left still smokes to this day, a memorial, a warning. The message was simple. We are not afraid to die if it means taking you with us. That was the day Earth became a weapon, and the galaxy started to take us seriously. After that, something shifted. We started receiving coded pulses from the orbiting silver ships, the judges, as we started calling them. They never landed, never spoke again. But every time we launched a large-scale retaliation, they reacted. Sometimes their signals intensified. Sometimes they went completely dark. We didn't know if they approved or condemned. We didn't care. Our focus narrowed to one mission: make every inch of this planet bleed for them. So we got creative. We turned old mines into kill zones, converted oil rigs into missile silos, filled skyscrapers with magnetic traps, and wired entire suburbs with EMPs hidden inside refrigerators and streetlights. Humans turned everything into death machines. We became the horror stories they'd tell each other back in their perfect little sanitized civilizations. And they deserved it. We lost people every day. Good ones. Some of the best. I can still see their faces. Can't remember all their names, but the faces, those stay. The kind of faces that haunted you before bed and got you out of it the next morning. But we were finally doing what no species had done before. We were winning. Not in territory. Not in numbers, but in impact. We made them afraid to engage. They started sending fewer patrols, fewer scouts. They started avoiding Earth's worst zones completely. They thought we were dying. We were evolving. Caleb had been quiet since the beacon. He spent most of his time deep in the bunker, working on something he wouldn't show anyone. Just bits of alien tech, wires, processors, scraps from crashed drones. He barely ate, barely slept. I found him one night in the old server room, half the lights burned out, his fingers bleeding from solder burns and electrical shocks. "Kid," I said, crouching beside him, "you gotta take a break before your heart gives out." "I'm close," he whispered, not looking at me. "To what?" He finally glanced up. His eyes weren't just tired. They were changed. Harder. Older. "I'm building our voice." That confused the hell out of me. He leaned back and tapped a monitor. On it, dozens of alien frequencies flashed like static thunder. "They talk," he said. "All of them. The harvesters, the judges, whatever's out there. But they don't talk to us. They talk about us. Like we're the infection." He pointed to a glowing crystal rigged into a jury-rigged amplifier. "This will let us talk back. And not just with sound, with data, emotion, rage, everything they've made us feel, we're sending it to the stars, all of it." "You sure that's smart?" He looked at me like I'd missed the point. "It's not about smart, it's about truth." We broadcast the message 2 days later. Caleb's voice. Raw, broken, unapologetic. "This is Earth. You came to cleanse us. You failed. You came to silence us. You failed. Now we speak, and every word is a curse." That message was wrapped in a storm of data, images, footage, biometric logs, screams, death counts, battle footage, names of the dead carved into stone. We didn't send it to beg, we sent it to infect. Within 3 hours, 2 of the silver Judge ships left orbit. Within 6, we received a new signal. Unknown language, different structure, encrypted. But it responded to our pulse. We weren't alone anymore. And the harvesters knew it. That same night, they made their boldest move yet. They dropped a world cleaner. That's what we started calling them. Those massive moon-sized drills. We'd seen one on the far side of the moon weeks earlier, just hovering. We didn't know what it did back then. Now we did. It landed in Brazil. Within 2 hours, the rainforest was gone. Not burned, not chopped. Gone. Atomized, replaced by a black, writhing platform that sucked in air and pulsed like a heartbeat. It wasn't a base, it was a reboot switch. They were trying to restart Earth like a corrupted machine, wipe the biosphere, install their own. Caleb saw it in real time and said 4 words I'll never forget. They're killing the sky. We couldn't stop the cleaner with bullets, not with bombs. We needed a miracle. We found one in an old bunker deep beneath a collapsed research lab in Nevada. One of our scavenger crews stumbled on it by accident, under 12 floors of rubble and radiation. They called it the Cradle. It wasn't alien, it was ours. Old military black project. Forgotten. Buried. Inside it, a weapon still sat in storage. One humanity had never used because it wasn't meant for Earth. A gravity bomb. Not a nuke. Not a kinetic warhead. Something else. A singularity core sealed in steel and built to collapse any structure within a 1-mile radius into nothing. Caleb ran tests for 2 days and said it would probably kill everyone within a 10-mile blast zone. We nodded. And we loaded it anyway. The cleaner had a weakness. Its anchor core was visible at its base for 5 minutes during each reboot cycle. We only had 1 shot. We sent a crew of 6 on a suicide run. 3 made it to the core. 1 lived long enough to detonate the bomb. The explosion turned the Brazilian basin into a wound. The cleaner cracked in half. Its tentacle-like roots buckled, twisted, and disintegrated. For the first time, we killed a world-class harvester system. It cost us 40,000 lives in the fallout. But we stopped the reboot. And that sent a message louder than anything before. Humanity is willing to erase parts of its own planet if it means stopping you. We're not just fighting for survival. We're fighting to make sure you never come back. I watched the smoke rise over Brazil for 2 days straight. We were halfway around the world, and we could still see it. Thick, dark columns curling into the atmosphere like the earth itself was exhaling fury. The world cleaner was gone. So were the cities around it, the rainforest, the rivers, the people. 40,000 dead, easy, and that was just what we could count. We'd stopped the reboot, sure. But what we did wasn't a victory, it was a scar. And it bled into all of us. Caleb barely spoke after the detonation. He stayed in the comms room most of the time, monitoring the pulses from space, trying to make sense of who was still watching, and who might be on the way. Me? I stopped trying to make sense of it. We weren't just soldiers anymore. We were reapers. Every life we lost came with a promise. You'll lose more. And the harvesters were finally listening. They stopped sending patrols entirely. No more drone scouts. No more foot soldiers. They weren't underestimating us anymore. They were planning something. And when it came, it didn't come from the sky. It came from under us. It started in South Africa. A resistance group near what used to be Johannesburg sent a shortwave. The ground opened. Black light. No explosion, just heat and sound. Then, everything gone. At first we thought it was exaggeration, trauma, maybe another cleaner. Then we got the same call from Cairo, then Bangladesh, then rural Norway. The harvesters weren't just trying to take the skies, they were reaching into the planet's core, digging into the bones of the earth to plant whatever virus they called order. Caleb figured it out first. "They're not wiping us out," he said, pacing back and forth with that exhausted twitch in his eye. "They're turning Earth into them, changing the structure, the magnetic flow, the biological base." He tapped a dusty screen, showing a 3D simulation pulled from salvaged orbital data. "They're not building a base." He paused, then looked at me. "They're building a new species." That hit like a gut punch. We weren't just fighting for the surface anymore. We were fighting for the soul of the planet. By this point, the judges, the silver ships in orbit, had gone completely dark. No more psychic messages, no pulses, just silence. And presence. Watching, always watching. The scary part wasn't that they hadn't interfered. It was the feeling they might have already made their decision. Caleb tried sending another transmission. This time, raw data from the ground dig sites. Heat maps, sonic readings, organic signatures that didn't match any known Earth life. Nothing came back. But 2 hours after the message went out, one of the judge ships left orbit. Straight up. Gone. We didn't know what that meant, not yet. The digging spread fast. Within days, there were seismic events in over 300 locations. The crust wasn't cracking. It was shifting, deliberately, like the Earth's own heartbeat was being replaced with something synthetic. Then came the towers. They erupted like tumors in the dead zones, massive black spires stretching toward the sky, humming with energy. Not power stations, not weapons, beacons. "Rewriting signals," Caleb muttered, staring at one through a scoped drone camera. "They're trying to change Earth's frequency." "What does that mean?" I asked. He didn't look away from the screen. "It means when Earth speaks, it won't speak human anymore." We formed the breaker units after that, small mobile teams whose only mission was to locate the spires and destroy them, no matter the cost. Suicide missions, mostly. Out of the first 20 units, only 3 came back. The harvesters didn't guard the towers with soldiers. They guarded them with echoes. People we thought were dead. Twisted. Mutated. Voices wrong. Faces blank, not machines, not clones. Possessed. We called them shades. They didn't use weapons, just walked toward you, bleeding radiation and whispers that cracked your sanity. You could kill them, but doing it too close infected you. We lost good people just from being within 10 feet of one. So the breakers got smart. They didn't fight. They collapsed towers from a distance, C4 in sewer lines, fuel bombs from drones, artillery from repurposed tanks. One by one, we brought the towers down, and Earth started breathing again. But we knew it wouldn't last, because then the sky opened for real. It happened over the Pacific. No warning, no shimmer, just a hole, black, perfect, cold, a tear in the atmosphere that didn't close. Out of it came something massive, too big to be a ship, too slow to be a meteor. It looked like a city turned inside out, floating, turning, alive. We didn't know what it was until the voices returned. Every man, woman, and child still alive heard it inside their skulls. You were given a chance, you responded with rage, judgment begins. The judges had decided, and the sentence was extinction. We watched from every continent as that thing, whatever it was, positioned itself above the Earth's equator. It didn't fire weapons. It sang, a low harmonic vibration that resonated with the spires still standing. The ground shook. The skies rippled, and across the world people started dropping dead, not from burns, not from bullets, from frequencies. Brains melted, hearts seized, entire towns fell to their knees and screamed until they died. That's when Caleb did something none of us expected. He stood up, walked to the transmission terminal, and activated the beacon again. Only this time, he didn't send rage, he sent understanding. We tried to stop him. He ignored us. "This isn't war anymore," he said. "It's demonstration." "What the hell does that mean?" I snapped. He turned to me, blood leaking from his ears from the judge pulse. Face pale, fingers trembling. "They're not erasing us for resistance. They're doing it to prove a point, to the rest of the galaxy, that this rebellion is what happens when rules are broken." He pointed to the beacon crystal. "But if we show them we understand what they're doing and why it's wrong, we flip the point. You're gambling with the whole planet." He smiled, faint and bleeding. "That's all we've ever done." Then he hit send. The message wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic, just a pulse wrapped in human emotion. Sorrow, fury, love, loss, the chaos of being human, raw, and unfiltered. The judges didn't respond right away, but the spires did. They went silent. And the song of death above us, it stuttered, like a skipped heartbeat. The psychic pressure stopped. Across the globe, people gasped for air. And then, for the first time since this all began, the judges spoke back. Not in our minds, in our language, on every frequency. Evaluation in progress. Caleb collapsed, still breathing, barely. We dragged him to the med bay, unsure if he'd wake up. Outside, the sky held its breath. The dig sites paused. The echoes stopped marching. The towers, dead quiet. A planetary stalemate. Then a new signal came through. Not from orbit, from deep space, unknown origin, translated through the same system Caleb had modified. Only one word came through clear. Humanity? The second word chilled us. Request! We didn't know who sent it, but whoever they weren't harvesters, and they weren't judges. They were something else, and they wanted to talk. The signal came through our patched-up comms like a whisper in a hurricane. We were still surrounded by silence. No drone patrols, no judge interference, no movement from the massive entity still hovering over the equator. But somewhere out there, in the dark between stars, someone was calling Earth by name. And they weren't demanding surrender. They were requesting something, a word we hadn't heard since the world burned. Humanity, request. We didn't answer right away. For once, our silence was deliberate. Caleb was still unconscious. His brain overloaded from the beacon burst. His vitals were stable, but barely. The medtech said his neurological patterns were scrambled like a bad radio signal. He might never come back. He'd saved us again. Delayed extinction. And now he lay there, motionless, while the rest of us stared at a single word glowing on a cracked monitor in a damp underground room. It blinked every 8 seconds, like a heartbeat. Request. What do they want? Someone whispered. My gut said this wasn't the harvesters, and it wasn't the judges. This was new. A third player, maybe a fourth. The galaxy was waking up. That beacon we activated? That wasn't just a cry for help. It was a flare. And now the scavengers, the watchers, the other outliers, they were all looking at us like we'd stepped into a room we weren't supposed to be in. And they wanted to know why. We spent 2 hours debating whether to respond. Some argued it was bait, a way for the judges to justify extermination. Others said it was hope, real hope, for the first time since the invasion. I didn't believe in hope, not anymore, but I believed in momentum, and Earth had it. So I walked into the broadcast room, wiped the blood from the cracked comms console, and opened a channel. This is Earth, I said, voice hoarse, throat dry. We hear you. The blinking text paused. The reply came almost instantly. You resist extinction. Why? I stared at the screen. It was such a cold question. Dispassionate. Not even hostile. Just clinical. Like a scientist watching lab rats that had suddenly figured out how to pick the lock on their cage. I typed the response slowly, because we weren't given a choice. There was a longer pause this time. Then, extinction was statistical, not moral. Resistance changes evaluation. That confirmed it. Whoever we were talking to, they weren't human, not close. They didn't think like us. They didn't feel like us. But they were watching. And maybe, just maybe, they were learning. The next message was the one that made me sweat. You are anomalous, biological disorder with technological capability. Define humanity. I just stared at the screen. Define humanity? How the hell do you explain pain, love, hatred, vengeance, art, instinct, survival, and contradiction in a sentence? You don't. But I tried. We break what we love and protect what we hate. We build cathedrals with the bones of monsters. We die screaming so someone else can live quiet. We are chaos with a heartbeat. I hit send. No going back. This time the pause stretched for several minutes. People gathered in the room. No one spoke. No one moved. Then, you are incompatible with galactic harmonics. I swallowed hard, so that was it. The polite version of a death sentence. But before I could respond, the next message came. Incompatibility is interesting. What? You redefine survival. Existing empires observe. That last line made my skin crawl. Not listen, not assist. They observe. The galaxy didn't come to help. It came to study. Later that day, we picked up something new on orbital feeds. A second entity had entered the solar system. Not a ship, not a fleet. Something colossal. It didn't move like the harvesters. Didn't shimmer like the judges. It didn't even travel in real space. It sort of bled into reality, like a mirage being pulled from behind a curtain. We called it the Witness. It sat beyond the moon, didn't speak, didn't react, just watched. It was shaped like a wheel with no center, constantly spinning, like a broken clock. And every few hours, it pulsed a strange blue light, not toward Earth, but into deep space. We figured it was broadcasting, logging, maybe reporting. Earth had become an experiment, and we were the variables. That night, I visited Caleb. He hadn't moved. Tubes in his nose, eyes half-lidded, twitching under the skin like he was still dreaming in code. I pulled a chair beside him and sat down, hands on my knees, watching him breathe. "I think we just made contact with something old," I said quietly. "Older than the harvesters. Older than whatever sent the judges. Something that looks at time in centuries, not seconds." No answer. Just beeping. "I don't know if that's good or bad," I continued, "but they're not trying to kill us yet. They're trying to understand us." I leaned forward. "But I don't know how much of ourselves we're supposed to show. Because what happens when they finally do understand?" Still nothing. "I miss your noise, kid," I muttered. "The way you argued with everything, even gravity." Caleb didn't move. But the monitor beside him blinked. Not an error, not a glitch. A message, written in the same alien code he used to decode the first beacon. I grabbed a pen and copied it. Took it to the comms team. They ran the symbols through our system, compared it with the database Caleb had built from drone fragments and broken harvesters. It translated to 5 words. They won't understand our grief. That night, I walked out into the crater zone where our last battle had scorched the earth black. The stars were clearer now, fewer harvesters, less interference, but they weren't comforting. They felt closer, like they were leaning in. I stood there for a long time, wondering what was really happening. Had we survived the worst? Or had we just stepped onto a bigger board? Were we being spared? Or studied? What was Earth now? A warning? A weapon? Or a disease that the universe couldn't quite kill? By morning, another message had come through. No voice, no emotion, just this. Humanity will be given one act, one stage, one chance to define its place. The word event followed. Then a countdown, 7 days. That was it. No instructions, no coordinates, just a timer ticking down and the world holding its breath. I didn't know what the event was, but I knew this much. It wasn't going to be a trial. It was going to be a test, one final moment to show the galaxy what we really are and what we're willing to become. 7 days. That's what the countdown gave us. 1 week to prepare for something we couldn't define, couldn't anticipate, and sure as hell couldn't control. The only thing we knew for certain? The galaxy was watching. I don't know what we thought the event would be. Some thought it was a trial, a diplomatic meeting, maybe. A test of culture, communication, maybe even strategy. Some thought it'd be a full-on attack, a final cleansing from the judges or the witness, meant to erase humanity with the flick of a switch. Me? I figured it would be a mix of both. Show us what you are, Earth, and we'll show you what judgment really means. The first day, we argued. Of course we did. Every resistance hub that still had power or radio made contact. Everyone wanted to take charge. Every voice thought it had the answer. We should prepare a broadcast, something emotional, something powerful. We need to show them our art, our history, the things that make us worth saving. No, we show them the war, the pain. We show them how we bleed, how we fight, how we don't die easy. That's what they respect. I didn't say much. Just sat in the corner of the bunker with my back against a rusted filing cabinet, watching Caleb's empty bed. He still hadn't woken up. 6 days left. By day 2, the noise had settled. There were no leaders anymore, not really. The world had lost those when the sky cracked open. What we had now were voices, those who could still speak loud enough for others to hear. And one of those voices came from an old satellite array buried in the Rockies, once part of a global listening post, back when Earth thought its enemies were human. They sent out a single, clear message. If this is our stage, we don't sing, we scream. I don't know who said it, but I agreed. We weren't poets, we weren't diplomats. We were survivors who'd watched their world turned into a graveyard. We didn't need to impress the stars. We needed to warn them. On the third day, the judges finally moved. All 3 remaining ships broke orbit and positioned themselves equidistant around the planet, facing inward, like sentinels forming a triangle. Then they opened. Not weapons, not drones. Windows. We could see into them. Not the insides of ships, but views, projections, live feeds from every continent, cities, villages, forests, oceans. Earth had been turned into a mirror. Whatever the event was going to be, it was going to be seen. Not just by them, by everyone. And then something even stranger happened. They gave us the stage. On day 4, a piece of the witness, the massive ring beyond the moon, detached and began to descend. It didn't crash. It didn't invade. It landed with impossible precision in what used to be the Sahara Desert, folding and unfolding itself like liquid architecture. Within hours, it created a perfect arena, circular, black as space, floating 1 meter above the sand. The judges transmitted a phrase to every functioning radio, screen, and satellite. Earth may present one representation of its species, one voice, one trial, one action. It wasn't a battle, it wasn't a debate, it was something else. We didn't know who to send. Presidents were dead, generals were gone, scientists had been slaughtered in the first strikes. The world's smartest, strongest, and loudest were mostly rotting underground. What we had left were the forgotten, the wounded, the ones who never mattered before the sky turned red. And maybe that was exactly the point. Day 5, Caleb woke up. No warning, no medical miracle, just opened his eyes. He stared at the ceiling like it owed him money, then sat up slowly and whispered, "We're still alive?" "Barely," I said, rushing to his side. He looked thinner, pale. But his mind? Still sharp? Still his. "I saw them," he said. "Who?" "In the dark," he whispered, while I was out. "They talked without words, measured me, measured us. And they're not afraid of us." That sank into my bones like ice. They're afraid of what we'll do if we're not stopped. We told him about the stage, the arena, the countdown. He listened without speaking, then asked the question I was dreading. "Who's going?" Nobody had volunteered. Not yet. Everyone was afraid. Not of death. We'd all danced with that too many times to care. No, this was worse. This was representation. Who could carry the weight of a dying world and speak loud enough for the stars to listen? Who could bleed without begging? Who could stand and say, "This is what it means to be human," and not blink? Caleb looked at me and smiled. "You're going." I laughed, bitter. "No chance in hell." He didn't smile back. "You're not special. That's why it has to be you." Day 6. The world went quiet. Everyone waited. People gathered around broken TVs, makeshift screens, battery-powered radios. In bombed-out bunkers and shattered apartments, they sat together. Families, orphans, killers, medics, starving children, waiting to see what Earth's final answer would be. I didn't sleep that night. Just walked the halls of the bunker, thinking about every mistake I'd ever made, every fight I picked, every face I couldn't save. Caleb met me in the loading bay. He handed me a pack. Inside it was a small transmitter. If it goes sideways, send everything. Our history, our pain, the files, the war footage, the beacon code, all of it. I zipped the pack. And if it doesn't go sideways? He smirked, pale and proud. Then maybe the galaxy finally learns what kind of mistake they made. Day 7, the last day. I stood alone in the center of the arena. Above me, the sky was black, not clouded, just gone. The witness hovered silently in orbit. The judge ships flickered like stars with eyes. The rest of the galaxy? I couldn't see them. But I knew they were out there. The arena shimmered. A being appeared across from me. It wasn't harvesters, it wasn't judges. It was something else entirely, like a construct of every species in one. Patchworked, changing, unreadable. It spoke with a voice that was every voice. You represent Earth. I nodded. You may offer one truth, one action, and we will decide. I swallowed. My heart felt like stone. I stepped forward, and I told them a story. I told them about Caleb, a broken boy who refused to break. I told them about Gino, who smiled before he sacrificed himself to destroy a harvester ship the size of a stadium. I told them about the screams in the streets, about the ash that rained down in Chicago, about the way fire smells when it's cooking your home. I told them about forgiveness, how we don't do it well, but how we try. I told them that we don't survive because we're strong, or smart, or good. We survive because we're too damn stubborn to die quiet. And then I gave them our action. I reached into my pack, and I pulled out the beacon, not the transmitter, the original, the one that started this. I held it up, and I shattered it on the ground. The shards scattered, the hum died. The glow went out, and I looked them in their galaxy-spanning face and said, "We don't need your stage. We already made our point." There was no applause, no response. The being across from me watched in silence. Then it vanished, the arena dimmed, the sky returned, and I stood alone in the silence of Earth. Waiting. I thought I'd be dead by now. Thought the moment I smashed that beacon into the arena floor, something would crack open in the sky, and I'd be vaporized for defiance. Turned into an example, a cautionary tale for other civilizations that dare raise their voice. But nothing happened. Not immediately. No flash of judgment, no burning retribution. Just silence. The kind of silence that makes your blood slow down and your ears ring because they're waiting for something that never comes. I stood there for a long time, alone in that impossible arena, floating above the desert, surrounded by gods who refused to speak. Then I walked out. Not because I'd won, but because there was nothing left to say. When I returned to the pit, the others were waiting. Caleb stood with a cane, looking like he'd aged 20 years in 7 days. But he was smiling. Real smile this time. The kind that said, "I didn't think you'd come back, but I'm damn glad you did." "You did it," he said. "No," I replied. "I just said what needed to be said." He stepped forward, handed me a cracked comms tablet. "It's happening." I stared at the screen. Dozens of new objects entering the solar system. Not just one. Not just from one direction. From all sides. Like a ripple in space had been answered with a tidal wave. Some ships were huge, too big to be harvesters, too slow to be weapons. Others, smaller, agile, unknown. Most were broadcasting signals we'd never seen before. "They're not attacking?" I asked. "Not yet. But they're not responding either." He nodded. "They're watching." That night, Earth lit up like a battlefield again. Not from war, but from activity. The judges repositioned. Their triangle formation shattered. 2 of their ships backed away, moved further out into orbit. The witness stayed. The ring, if you could call it that, pulsed twice. Slow, deliberate, not in aggression, in confirmation. It was like the universe was nodding, or marking the end of something. But if that was the end, then what the hell came next? On the second day after the event, something changed. The first envoy arrived. Not to speak, not to negotiate, just to walk. It landed outside what remained of Sydney, burned out steel skeletons and melted concrete. A clean zone since the third wave. No people, no tech. We had motion sensors buried deep, though, and they picked up a form. 1. Walking. Human-shaped, but taller, leaner, armor fused to skin like metal had grown out of its bones. No visible weapons. No escort. We watched it through satellite feeds for hours. It walked the city. Slowly. Touching walls. Looking at rubble. Picking up charred relics. And when it was done, it stood in the middle of a collapsed intersection and just looked at the sky. Then it vanished, not transported, not killed, vanished. No message, no threat, just observation. The second envoy didn't come alone. 3 of them this time. Different shapes. 1 humanoid, 1 quadruped like a twisted elk covered in plating, and 1 that didn't seem to walk so much as hover over reality. They appeared in Rome, same behavior, examining, scanning, touching, not talking, never talking, then gone. We started calling them the Watchers, and every time they left, we got a signal ping from the witness, not speech, logging. Caleb said it best. They're writing the Bible of Earth right now, and we're the verses. By day 4, more Watchers arrived, all across the world, some in ruined cities, others in wild lands untouched by fire or war. They never stayed long, never interacted, just appeared, walked, vanished. 1 showed up in Alaska and stood for hours in front of a family that refused to evacuate. Didn't speak, didn't move, just watched them cook food over a fire. The father said the being looked sad. Then it left. It took us another full day to realize what they were doing. Caleb was the one who cracked it, of course. They're collecting data, he said, sliding image after image onto the war room screen. Not about our weapons, not about our resistance. He zoomed in. Faces. The Watchers were tracking expressions. Joy, rage, sorrow, confusion, grief, hope, raw human emotion. They were cataloging it. Not for study, for understanding. The event hadn't been a test of strength. It had been a test of soul. And somehow, some way, we passed. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel victorious. I felt exposed. Like we'd opened our rib cages and showed the stars everything inside. Every dark corner, every cracked piece. And they still weren't sure what to make of it. It wasn't over. Hell, I wasn't even sure it had begun. But on the 6th day after the event, something happened that made me realize the war, the real war, was still simmering beneath our feet. The harvesters returned. Not with ships, with a message. It came in at 3 a.m., slicing through encrypted resistance frequencies, broadcasting in our own voice. You have embarrassed your extinction. We tracked the signal to the Pacific. Underwater. A facility we'd never seen before. Buried too deep to detect. Shielded with tech we hadn't cracked yet. They never left, Caleb said. They just went underground. The harvesters hadn't accepted the outcome of the event. They were waiting. Waiting for the Watchers to leave. Waiting for the stars to look away. And when they did, they'd finish what they started. That was the moment I knew. We'd been given a pause, not peace, a breath, not freedom. A second chance, but one that would not come again. So we made a decision, the final one. We broadcast a new message to every corner of the galaxy listening. Earth remains. We have not changed. We bleed. We burn. We endure. If you come again with fire, you will leave with ash. If you come again with silence, we will scream louder. If you come again to watch, then remember this. We are the monsters you made. We do not forget, and we do not forgive. There was no reply. Not that day. But one of the judge ships turned away, left orbit, for good, and in the distance we saw something we hadn't seen since before the sky cracked. Stars, clear, pure, not blocked by metal, not masked by fire. Just light. We always thought the worst of it came from the sky. The harvesters, the drones, the orbiting death ships. They came with beams and gravity weapons, with machines that walked like ghosts and whispered extinction in every language. We thought we'd survived the worst. But we were wrong. The sky was just their distraction. The real threat had been buried the entire time. After the event, after I smashed the beacon and the Watchers came down to study our pain, the harvesters stayed quiet. Not gone, not defeated, just quiet, patient. They'd gone underground after the failure of the world cleaner in Brazil, disappeared into the earth like worms retreating from fire. And while the rest of the world rebuilt or burned or waited to see if we'd get nuked out of existence by judgment from space, they were digging, and they were building something down there. We didn't realize it until one of our patrols near an old subway line in Paris picked up seismic anomalies, too sharp, too rhythmic, not tectonic, mechanical, a drill, deep, continuous, focused. They weren't retreating. They were terraforming from below. I remember the war room the night we confirmed it. Caleb was back on his feet fully by then, still pale, still wired tight from the psychic overload, but his brain hadn't slowed an inch. He'd linked our remaining seismic data to heat scans pulled from patched satellites, and when he overlaid them on a global map, it looked like veins, all connected to one central location deep beneath the surface, right beneath Central Asia. "What is it?" I asked, watching the map pulse like a heartbeat. He zoomed in. The center glowed red-hot, readings that shouldn't have been possible beneath the crust without causing a full planetary rupture. "Whatever they're building," he said, "they're feeding it with Earth's core." I didn't ask how that worked. We were way past science now. This was war alchemy. They weren't just terraforming the planet. They were converting it. We called it the Root. It was a good name, biblical, old, ugly, and it fit. The Root wasn't just a place. It was a system, a living factory buried inside Earth's deepest, darkest places. It was tapping geothermal heat, drawing metal and carbon and ash to power something massive. "What if it's another cleaner?" someone asked. Caleb shook his head. "No, this isn't meant to wipe Earth. This is meant to replace it." "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said slowly, "when they're done, Earth won't be Earth anymore. It'll be theirs." He looked up at me. "And we'll just be the first fossils." The Watchers didn't respond when we sent the data. We tried, multiple times. We beamed everything we could to the witness in orbit. Proof, recordings, translations, no reply, not a word. Like they'd finished their observation. And now they were just gone. One of the satellites even caught footage of one of the Watchers walking into the ocean and never resurfacing. It wasn't abandonment. It was finality. We'd been judged. Now the rest was up to us. We formed the descent teams the next morning. Specialists, fighters, People who had nothing left to live for except the chance to bleed something that bled us first. We picked 32 from across the surviving resistance cells. Engineers, soldiers, scavengers. Caleb built the route using ancient oil rig blueprints, old Soviet mines, and fractured subway systems to trace a path as close to the route's central structure as possible. I led the first team. It wasn't heroism. It was logic. If Earth was going to burn from the inside out, I'd rather die on the way down than wait topside for the end. And besides, we all had blood on our hands by now. Might as well use it one more time. The descent began just before dawn. We loaded into old transports refitted with ground-bore tech scavenged from an old U.S. Geological Survey station. No armor, no weapons beyond what we carried. Just steel, fuel, and one mission. Reach the route. Plant the fusion warheads. End it. We were in the ground less than 5 minutes before we lost contact with the surface. Radio static. GPS gone. Every sensor started spinning like a drunk. They'd rigged the crust. Not with explosives, not with weapons, with scramblers. Reality down there was off. Gravity shifted. Light bent. The walls moved when we weren't looking. I don't even remember how long we were descending. Time broke. Watches failed. People got nosebleeds. A guy named Tucker hallucinated his dead wife and nearly walked off a ledge that didn't exist. Then we reached the chamber, and everything stopped. The route was not a base. It was a womb, a pulsating cavern the size of a city, black and red and gray, lit by veins of glowing mineral that pulsed like a nervous system. Machines crawled along the walls like ants, wiring the stone with web-like cords. At the center, hanging in the void, was it. We didn't know what to call it. A seed. A core. An egg. It hung in the air, rotating slowly, covered in layered plates of metal that moved like scales. Every few seconds, a pulse would shudder out of it, shaking the walls, heating the air. It wasn't finished, but it was close. We had 6 warheads, enough to glass a city if triggered right. The plan was simple. Spread them out, arm them, detonate remotely from a relay uplink Caleb designed to cut through the scrambler fields for exactly 4 seconds. In, out. Boom. What happened instead? They were waiting. The shades, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, human-shaped, human-voiced, but not human. They stepped out of the walls, out of cracks, out of machines. One of them looked like my brother. He'd died in the second wave. His face was perfect. So was the scream when I shot him in the chest. The shades didn't attack like soldiers. They approached, arms out, heads tilted, whispering. Let go. Stop hurting. Sleep. Be forgiven. We fought through them, not just with bullets, with noise, with fire, with memories. One of the engineers hacked a nearby tower and pumped raw human video through its systems. Laughing kids, street fights, birth, war, sex, funerals, people screaming, people loving. The shades shrieked, twitched, fell. They couldn't process us. They were made for control, not chaos. And we were chaos incarnate. We reached the seed, planted the warheads. Caleb's relay triggered from the surface. 4 seconds, then 3, then nothing. No boom, no light, just silence. And then the seed opened. It was alive, not biological, not mechanical, both. Like a machine taught how to think emotion, but only understood submission. It spoke with 1,000 voices, some in languages we didn't know, some in the voices of people we'd lost. One of them was my mother. Stop hurting, it said through her voice. Let us begin again. Then it showed us its memory, projected into our heads. Not images, experiences, worlds it had erased, Civilizations folded into obedient colonies. Rebellions squashed before they started. The ones who screamed were recycled. The ones who begged were blessed. Earth was to be the template for the next phase. The perfect blend of defiance and obedience. They weren't trying to kill us. They were trying to become us. Only better. Only quieter. Only tamed. I screamed. I don't remember what I said. I just remember dragging myself toward the warhead controls. Blood running from my nose and eyes, pulse stuttering in my ears. The detonation timer was frozen, blocked by some alien logic code. Then I heard Caleb in my earpiece. One word. Override. Then static. The warheads lit green. The seed reacted, screamed, pulled energy from the walls, tried to cocoon itself in more metal. Too late. I hit the final trigger. Everything went white. When I woke up, I was on the surface, in the pit, burned, shaking, half deaf. Caleb was there. He'd rerouted the detonation link and pulled me out through an emergency shaft we didn't even know worked. The root was gone. The seed, vaporized. And deep beneath the earth, silence had finally returned. The sky went quiet after the explosion. No more messages, no more signals, no psychic pulses bending our bones, no watchers walking through ruins. No orbiting judges humming judgments into the earth. Just silence. Real silence. And it wasn't comforting. It was the kind that comes right before the second scream. We'd done it. We destroyed the root. We stopped the harvesters from turning Earth into a twisted second home. We killed their machine-blooded seed before it could birth whatever perfect little post-human model they wanted to infect the stars with. But the cost? Too much. Out of the 32 who went down with me, only 4 came back. 2 of them won't walk again. 1 doesn't speak anymore. And me? Well, I still have all my limbs. But something inside me cracked down there. In the dark. With the whispers. With the memory voices crawling through my ears. I've had nightmares every night since we returned. But the worst part is, they're not my nightmares. They're its. Caleb ran diagnostics on the energy pulse left behind by the warheads. He said it wasn't just an explosion. The fusion reaction destabilized the root's psionic relay, blew a hole straight through the layer of reality they were using to communicate. It's not just gone, he told me, eyes dark, sleepless. It screamed before it died. To who? He turned the monitor toward me. There were coordinates. Not Earth's. Somewhere outside the system. Beyond the galaxy. Deep space. We'd set off a beacon of our own, a flare, a siren, and something heard it. On the second day after the root's destruction, the witness vanished. One moment it hovered quietly above the moon, its vast ring-shaped mass spinning in slow, patient judgment. The next? Gone. No ripple, no engine burn, no retreat. It just disappeared. Like it was never there. Caleb said it folded, like a piece of paper between universes. That's when I felt it in my chest. The same way you feel a storm coming, not in the sky, but in the blood, in your breath. Like your body knows something your brain hasn't caught up to yet. We hadn't scared them off. They just realized we weren't the only ones screaming. The messages started again on day 3. Not from our enemies, not from the Watchers, from places we didn't know existed. Old colonies, hidden stations, abandoned listening posts buried on asteroids nobody had charted in 2,000 years. All saying the same thing. Something's moving in the dark, and they weren't talking about us. One signal came through clearer than the rest. an automated distress beacon from a derelict mining moon called Esca 7 on the edge of the Miran Belt. The message looped every 10 seconds. No life detected. Station breached. They do not speak. They only consume. Caleb pulled satellite records from that system. The station had been offline for over a century. No crew, no signal, no light, until the day after we destroyed the route. Then, a pulse, followed by silence. And then the beacon, like something had woken up. Something that wasn't meant to be found. We brought it to the war table. Every major resistance node still operational linked in. Faces I hadn't seen in weeks. Some with burns, some missing limbs. All alive. For now. This isn't about Earth anymore, Caleb said. Never was, someone muttered from the corner. No, he agreed. Earth was a test site. A model. The harvesters wanted to see if they could build something out of us. And when they failed, they triggered the next tier. I stepped forward. They woke their gods. There was a myth we'd heard, half-whispered in decoded harvester files Caleb once cracked, a word they never translated, always left in their tongue. Gerrit. Caleb had translated it years ago, before the event, before the route, back when we were still just trying to not die. The word had no direct meaning. Closest translation? The sleepers. We thought it was metaphor, an AI archive, an old programming line. But what if it wasn't? What if what the harvesters feared wasn't us? What if they were running from something else? That night, I sat with Caleb on the bunker roof, watching the sky. We had an old telescope, cracked lens, scratched frame, still worked. And as we stared into the stars, we saw it. Not a ship, not a fleet, a shadow, blocking out stars in patterns we couldn't trace, moving against light, not through it. It was like something so big, so wrong, that reality bent to stay out of its way. And it was coming. What do we do? I asked, quiet. Caleb didn't answer right away. Just sat there, breathing through his teeth, knuckles white on the telescope barrel. Then finally he said, "We tell them." "Who?" "The galaxy." "You think they'll listen?" "No," he whispered, "but they'll remember." The next day, we used the beacon crystal's last working relay. It was supposed to be dead, shattered after the event. But Caleb had rebuilt part of it, not to send another cry for help. That chapter was over. This was something else. This was a warning. We activated the relay and broadcast one final message to every corner of space that had an ear left to listen. Caleb recorded it. I read it. To whatever still exists beyond this burning sky, we destroyed the root. We bled the ones who came to erase us. But they weren't the end. They were just the gatekeepers. And they've opened the wrong door. Something older is coming. Something that does not build or conquer or enslave. It does not want your land, your people, your knowledge. It wants your silence. Because it feeds on the noise. We've seen the edge of its shadow, felt the hunger in our bones. We don't ask for aid. We don't want your pity. We just want you to know, Earth screamed first, and now the stars are starting to whisper back. If you hear this, you are already in danger. If you ignore it, you are already dead. We are the spark. You are the fuel. And the darkness is very, very hungry. We sent the message, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something lift off my chest. Not peace, not relief, but clarity. This was never about winning. It was about enduring long enough to become part of the next chapter. And now, whoever's next, they've been warned. We thought the galaxy was full of conquerors. Turns out, it's full of cowards. 2 days after we broadcast our warning, the last signal Earth may ever send, more than a dozen civilizations went dark. Not attacked, not destroyed. They just stopped transmitting. Dead silence. Stations that had been online for millennia vanished from every known frequency. Entire asteroid colonies wiped from star charts. Deep space listening posts. Black site AIs, archive moons, all gone. No debris, no distress calls, not even static. It was like they were never there, and every hour that passed made the truth harder to deny. Something was coming, and it wasn't stopping. The galaxy's response? Run! Trade routes shut down, border gates collapsed, advanced species burned their own colonies to avoid contamination. We intercepted messages from high councils dissolving their alliances and withdrawing into deep voids with escape fleets. Some even scrambled their own navigation maps, erasing paths to their homeworlds in case it ever came looking. The oldest races, the ones that used to lecture us about balance, peace, and enlightenment, gone. Cowards. Not a single ship came to help, not even a voice on the comms to say, "Good luck." Humanity was alone again. And that suited me just fine. Caleb started calling it the Hollow. Not the shadow, not the thing, not the enemy. The Hollow, it fit, because whatever it was, this thing that was chewing through galaxies and swallowing stars, it didn't behave like anything we'd ever faced. It didn't negotiate. It didn't threaten. It didn't explain. It removed. We saw it for the first time through a deep-range telescope, an old Soviet relic we found buried in an abandoned Arctic station. Caleb patched in salvaged optics from a downed harvester ship and amplified the signal through 2 layers of converted crystal relay tech. It took 2 hours to stabilize. What we saw wasn't possible. There were no engines, no structure, no visible energy source, just absence. A roiling wound in space. A mass so black, so wrong, that light didn't bounce off it. It bent. The stars behind it? Gone. Not blocked, erased, and the worst part? It was growing. "It's not a ship," Caleb whispered. "What is it then?" He didn't answer, but I saw it in his eyes. It was death, evolving. 3 days after the sighting, the Hollow entered our system. It didn't attack. It didn't speak. It just arrived. And the universe shrank around it. Gravitational fields inverted. Magnetic poles shifted. Entire satellite arrays collapsed from EMP spikes. The moon cracked. No sound, no light. Just a single fracture like someone had tapped a hammer against an eggshell. Tidal systems across Earth went haywire. Floods swallowed coastlines that had already been burned and rebuilt. Storms rolled in from skies that had once been burned clean. We hadn't fired a shot, and we were already losing. Then came the spires. Not ours, not harvesters. These were different, organic, fleshy, crawling. They didn't land. They grew, out of thin air, like tumors being pushed through skin. The first one appeared in what was left of Mumbai. It pulsed, vibrated, then exploded. Not a bomb, not a sound, just a scream. Every living thing within a mile radius dropped dead. Instant. No wounds, no blood, just off. Their hearts stopped. Brains shut down, like someone hit the power button on life. The survivors near the edge? They woke up days later with memories that weren't theirs. Dreams filled with oceans that had no bottom and mouths that never stopped opening. That was how the Hollow introduced itself. We learned quickly. These spires didn't communicate. They claimed. Wherever they rooted, they infected. Not with viruses, not with tech, with silence. We lost 30 cities in 3 days, and it wasn't like the Harvester attacks. There were no survivors. Once the spires bloomed, everything within reach, people, power, plants, machines, went still. Even AI shut down. Whatever the hollow was, it hated motion. It consumed energy like hunger made flesh. We tried shooting them, bombing them. Pointless. They didn't react, didn't even acknowledge us, until we tried to cut one open. That's when it retaliated. The pit's North Recon Unit had isolated a half-grown spire near the coast, barely 10 meters high, still pulsing like a heartbeat under layers of gelatinous black skin. They used plasma cutters and a fusion lance. It worked for 30 seconds. Then the spire screamed. Not out loud. In our heads, everyone within 100 miles collapsed, some foaming, some bleeding, some praying in languages no one had spoken for 1,000 years. It didn't kill them. It took them. We never found their bodies, only their clothes, neatly folded at the edge of the crater. It was Caleb who figured it out. It doesn't attack, he said, eyes bloodshot, hands shaking. It consumes movement, sound, thought, anything that stirs the fabric of space. He pointed to his old neural scans from when he blacked out during the beacon event. This thing's older than programming, older than physics. It's a reaction, not a creature. What the hell does that mean? It means we didn't wake it up. He looked at me, pale and hollowed out. We gave it permission. That night, I took a walk through the ruins of what used to be downtown Denver. Fires still burned in some parts, not from bombs, just carelessness. Or maybe someone thought fire made more sense than letting the darkness take them. I passed a group of survivors huddled under an old parking structure. Kids, no adults. One of them looked up at me and asked, "Is it God?" I shook my head. "No." "Then what is it?" I didn't answer, because deep down I think I knew. It wasn't a god. It was the thing gods fear. On the 5th day of the Hollow's presence in the system, Caleb came to me with an idea. "We have to talk to it," I laughed. "You think it talks?" "Not with words, but it listens." I stared at him. "Caleb, it's killing everything, ripping reality open. What makes you think it wants a conversation?" He didn't blink. "Because it hasn't erased us yet." The plan was insane. Build a pulse device, a modified version of the beacon that could mimic the spire's signal, not to disrupt it, but to join it, for a few seconds. Not to fool it, to speak its language, like shouting into a black hole and hoping it echoes back. "You do realize," I said, loading a mag into my rifle. "This thing could cook our brains before we even hit send." "Then it won't be a long scream." We built it using scrap from the last Harvester drones we salvaged, layered it with the amplifier Caleb had hidden since the event, strapped it to a mobile power core and hauled it to the edge of the newest spire. This one was in Argentina, still growing, still humming. We set the device down, synced the signal, and waited. Caleb hit the switch. The sound was unbearable, not in the ears, in the soul, like something ancient and broken grinding against the edge of reality. It lasted 10 seconds. Then everything went quiet. The spire stopped pulsing, the sky above it shivered, and then a voice entered our heads. Not like the judges, not like the root. This was raw, violent, empty. "Why do you speak?" Caleb stepped forward. "To nothing. To everything. To ask why you've come." The answer came without pause. "Because you are not quiet." He swallowed. "And if we become quiet?" The pause was longer this time. Then you are not." I don't know what I expected. Maybe that the Hollow would ignore us, maybe it would erase us instantly for daring to speak, or maybe we'd trigger some ancient defense system, and that would be the end. Quick, silent, done. But it spoke. Not in words. Not even in thought, in something before thought, a pressure in the blood, a shift behind the eyes, like reality had a weight to it, and it leaned in close to whisper. Then you are not. That was its response, to our offer, to our promise of silence, to our hope for survival. It didn't make sense at first, until Caleb translated it. If we can quiet ourselves, he said, pacing like a ghost across the scorched concrete bunker floor, then we are already something else, not human, not life, just absence. He stopped in front of me, eyes too wide, voice too calm. To meet its condition is to become nothing. So there is no choice, I muttered. No, he said. There's a choice. He turned back to the screen where we replayed the spire pulse on a loop, its vibrations forming strange patterns in the air. But the cost of resistance is that it keeps watching. We met with the remaining resistance cells that night. Only 8 of them left. The rest had either gone dark, gone underground, or gone mad. A few committed mass silence, what they called stillness acceptance, shut down generators, turned off lights, stopped speaking, sat in the dark until they stopped breathing. They thought surrender would be painless. They were wrong. The spires still came, still grew, still screamed. The Hollow doesn't accept quiet as compliance. It only accepts it as a signal. The end of sound means it's time to consume. We held the meeting in a half-buried listening post outside of what used to be Prague. The walls were cracked, the air stale, and the power was rigged through a solar grid that barely held charge past sundown. But it was enough. Representatives from each surviving zone appeared through cracked screens and flickering holograms, tired faces, hollowed eyes, some missing limbs, some missing families, all of them carrying the weight of a dying world on shoulders that had long since forgotten what rest felt like. We gave them everything: the signal, the spire reaction, the Hollow's message. Then we asked the only question that mattered. Do we run, kneel, or fight? The room went silent for a long time. Then a woman from the Kazakh cell leaned into her camera, half her face scarred from a failed bombing run. You already know the answer, she said. If we were the type to kneel, we'd be dead by now. Another voice chimed in from the African coast. And run where? The stars are just more shadows. Then an old man in a patched-up oxygen mask spoke from a bunker under Greenland. We fight, not because we'll win, but because we remember what we were. He paused, coughing hard, then added, Let the Hollow remember too. That was the moment the decision was made. Not survival, not escape, defiance. Caleb called it Project Black Echo. We were going to build a weapon, not to kill the Hollow, that wasn't possible, but to remind it what pain sounded like. Something so loud, so violent, so human, it would leave a scar in the dark, even gods couldn't ignore. The tech came from old harvester cores, those crystal composite processors they used to link their hive systems. We still had fragments stored in cold lockers beneath the pit. Caleb used them to amplify neural frequency instead of suppress it. Then we combined it with old Earth infrastructure, underground sonic tunnels, deep-core bomb latches, even weather control towers. The result? A planetary scream. We would pump every death, every war, every memory of pain and rage into a single psychic detonation, fire it through Earth's ley lines, and blast it directly into the next spire the Hollow tried to grow. It wouldn't destroy it, but it would hurt it. And that was enough. We launched the build in silence. Every zone sent what they had. Power cores, memory tech, emotional archives, even ritual tools, things made for grief, for mourning, for remembrance. We didn't care about science anymore. We cared about impact. It took 6 days. On the 7th, the Hollow dropped a new spire in Alaska. Bigger than the rest. Taller. Pulsing harder. Almost breathing. We moved fast. We buried the transmitter deep beneath an old oil field, wired it into the ground, and synced it to the spire's rhythm. Then we connected Caleb. He was the only one who could survive the neural connection. Barely. I stood beside him in the underground chamber as the systems came online, cables twitching, dust raining from the ceiling as the spire above us began to resonate. "You don't have to do this," I said. He laughed, bitter and small. "I do? No one else knows how to carry the signal." I helped him into the chair, strapped him in, watched his pulse spike on the monitors. "I never asked," I said. "Why did you stay? Through all of it?" He looked at me, tired eyes sharp with something older than fear. "Because I want the universe to remember our noise." We activated the Black Echo at 03:14 a.m. Earth, UTC. The moment the pulse hit, the entire planet screamed, not in sound, in memory. It broadcast every human death, every scream, every betrayal, every final moment recorded since the start of our war, the weeping of children, the laughter of killers, the silence of the buried. It wasn't beautiful, it was honest. The spire convulsed, shook, then shattered. We didn't know they could be destroyed. Until then. The explosion knocked out power across the Western Hemisphere. But for the first time since the Hollow arrived, it recoiled. That was 3 days ago. Since then, it hasn't grown a single new spire. It hasn't moved. It just waits, orbiting, watching, maybe calculating, maybe healing, or maybe deciding. Caleb hasn't woken up. His neural pathways are fried. Brain still active, but in ways we can't explain. He's dreaming in signals now. Our medtech says he hums in his sleep. Not melodies, codes. We don't know if it's his mind echoing back or something else speaking through him. Either way, we're not shutting it off, because we're preparing the second echo, and we need him to guide it. I didn't sleep the night we broke the spire. No one did. The whole planet felt it, like something inside the earth had roared through our bones and spat memory into the sky. Even those who didn't know what we'd done stopped what they were doing and just listened. For a second. A breath. A pause between terror and survival. And in that moment, the Hollow hesitated. No new spires. No new death pulses. Just that massive black shape in orbit, beyond form, beyond light. Still. I'd never seen the stars look so afraid. We buried 20 men and women that next morning. Engineers, operators, backup technicians, people who held the relay towers together during the first pulse. Their hearts couldn't take the feedback. Blood vessels burst. Some simply collapsed mid-task. Others died with their hands still gripping the controls. Heroes. Every one of them. They didn't have speeches written about them. No statues, no banners. But the earth itself vibrated with what they gave. I stood at the edge of the pit, staring into the windless sky, and said nothing. Some things don't need words. They just need to be remembered. Caleb still hadn't woken up. His body lived, but his mind. His neural patterns had gone beyond anything we understood. Even our best salvaged medtech couldn't track them. The readings moved like radio signals, not consistent, not natural, pulsing on strange frequencies, like he was listening to something far away, or maybe being listened to. He twitched every few hours, muttered numbers, coordinates, sometimes a name, Never the same one twice. Once, he whispered mine. Then silence again. I sat beside him most nights, just watching. Once you've fought machines and gods, you start appreciating the quiet suffering of one man, because it means he's still in the fight. The others kept pushing. We had momentum now. The Black Echo wasn't just a weapon. It was a voice. And the hollow? It had never heard anything like it. We figured it out in fragments. The spires were more than anchors. They were feelers, probes designed to test a planet's resistance to compression, emotional, energetic, biological. They didn't just flatten civilizations, they swallowed their identity, converted grief into obedience, turned defiance into decay. The hollow wasn't trying to rule us. That would require intention. It was just trying to make sure we never existed again. We couldn't let that happen. We didn't just want it to leave. We wanted it to remember us the way a wound remembers the blade. So we began building Echo 2. Not a refined version, not cleaner, not safer, louder, meaner, permanent. No longer a scream of pain. This one would be a war cry. We set up the construction zone in Siberia, where the crust was thin and the old resistance strong. The land there didn't beg for peace. It begged for vengeance. Broken cities, black trees, animal bones scattered across frost-bitten roads. The kind of place that already felt half dead. Perfect for what we needed. We scavenged everything left. Old reactor cores, psychic dampeners, a backup beacon amplifier from the event days, even pieces of the cracked moon that had fallen through the atmosphere like burning hail a month ago. Every part of Earth that had been wounded. We used it. We were going to build our scream out of scar tissue. I coordinated the external teams, 27 strike crews, mobile, armed, trained to hit any spire that rose while we worked. Their job wasn't to win, it was to buy time. We lost 4 crews in the first week. All gone without trace, no signals, no wreckage, just their last messages. Spire forming. Pulse imminent. We're going in anyway. That was all, and it was enough, because every hour we bought was another hour to finish the Echo. I asked Caleb, still comatose, what we should name it. He didn't respond. But the next day, one of the monitoring techs noticed something weird in the neuroscan display, a repeating waveform buried deep in his synaptic patterns. When translated into sound, it wasn't just noise. It was music. Old, brutal, human. Beethoven. Fifth Symphony. The part where it sounds like war. We named the new signal core Fifth Echo. We finished the final array on a windless morning as ash drifted from the sky like snow. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like last rites. This wasn't a message to the stars. It was a middle finger to the thing eating them. A declaration. You didn't break us. We placed the detonator inside the old spine of a harvester warden. Those massive walkers that used to patrol cities like silent titans. Now hollow, rusting, buried in snow and time. We wired the entire warden to sing when the Echo fired. Not a scream this time. A choir. Voices collected from every survivor we could find. Men, women, children, all saying the same words. We remain. The trigger was set for 03:33 a.m. Caleb still hadn't moved, so I went to him, sat beside his bed, stared at the monitor flickering faint green as the countdown ticked towards 0. I don't know if you can hear me, I whispered, but if this is the last thing we do, I want it to be the thing they never forget. His finger twitched. I sat up. Then his lips parted. He didn't open his eyes, but he spoke. One word. Louder. I gave the order. The fifth echo fired. I can't explain the sound. It wasn't sound. It was memory, rage, history, love, loss. The voices of 1,000 generations screaming their refusal to go quietly. It shook the ground, shattered glass as far as Alaska, shorted every sensor on every orbital monitor. Even the hollow's shape, so massive it blocked stars, twitched. It felt pain, real pain. And we made sure it understood where it came from. Then the spires started collapsing, not all at once, one at a time, tearing themselves apart like infected wounds finally purging rot. They didn't just fall, they screamed back. Some begged. Some cursed. Some just whimpered. Each one had absorbed thousands of human deaths. And now, those deaths were being given back. Caleb flatlined 5 minutes after the fifth echo. No noise, no warning, just a long, quiet beep. We tried everything. But I think he knew. He gave everything he had into that signal, all his pain, all his memory, all his hate. He gave Earth the only thing the Hollow never wanted us to have: a legacy. It's been 3 days. The Hollow hasn't moved. It hasn't sent a spire. It hasn't consumed another city. It just drifts, wounded, listening, maybe planning. But one thing is certain now. It knows our name. It's been 9 days since the fifth echo. 9 days since Earth screamed louder than anything the galaxy's ever heard. 9 days since Caleb died with a whisper and left behind a silence that doesn't feel like loss. It feels like warning. And in those 9 days, the Hollow has done something it's never done before. Nothing. It still hangs in orbit, blotting out parts of the sky, a black wound in space, rimmed with stars that don't dare shine too close. The atmosphere doesn't ripple like it used to. The tides have steadied. Even the static on our radios, the ever-present hum of cosmic tension, has gone quiet. But it's still there, watching, waiting, not dead, not gone, just thinking, if it even thinks at all. We've tried reaching out, not to talk, to provoke. We've broadcast every human song we could find: war chants, funeral dirges, opera, punk rock, child's lullabies, screams from war documentaries. Anything that once meant something to someone, we lit the skies with it. Nothing. The spires have stopped forming. The last one crumbled in West Africa during a rainstorm, collapsing into wet dust like it had lost the will to stand. We don't know if we won. We don't know what we are now. All we know is we're still here, and that means we have a choice. Some say we should rebuild, take back what was lost, reconnect the zones, reform councils, dig the roots of humanity into the earth again. Others say we should leave, scavenge what's left of the harvester fleet, rebuild the Ark ships, and head out into the dark. Find new worlds, start over. Some even say we should go quiet. No more signals, no more transmissions, just fade slowly beneath the stars until we become nothing again. Just bones under the soil. Like we were always meant to be. But I say no. I say we answer. I walk into the open bunker chamber alone, just me. The wind outside carries dust, smoke, the weight of 10 billion dead. But this place? It's silent now, peaceful in the kind of way that makes your heart twitch. The walls still bear the scars of battles we don't talk about. The tech is rusted. The screens flicker like tired eyes. But the comm still works. That's all I need. I power it up, patch into every orbital antenna we haven't lost, and I speak. To the Hollow, to the darkness, to whatever still drifts beyond the veil of form and time, you came for silence. You came to erase what you couldn't control. You failed. We screamed. We bled. We burned ourselves into your memory. You felt our pain. Now feel our presence. I pause, close my eyes, feel the weight of what comes next. We will not go quiet. We are not noise. We are the new signal. So hear this and understand. We forgive nothing. We forget nothing. We endure everything. We are Earth. We are the lesson you never wanted to learn. And we are not done yet. The signal cuts. The hum of the earth returns. Low, guttural, alive, the hollow doesn't reply, but it does move. It starts slowly, a subtle shift in orbit, not an approach, not a retreat, a rotation. For the first time since it arrived, the hollow reveals its shape. Not a ship, not a creature, a mirror. Its black surface shifts, showing light that shouldn't exist. Memory. Formless, broken fragments of everything it's consumed. Civilizations, planets, screams. And there, at the very center, a flicker, a voice, Caleb's. It's not him, I know. He's dead, gone. But something of him, some imprint, some echo, remains. And it speaks only one phrase. The choice is yours. I collapse into the chair behind me, heart racing, throat dry. What choice? I whisper, and the hollow answers. Not in words, in visions. First vision, a world bathed in quiet. No war, no noise, no suffering. Cities made of light, skies without weather, peace, stillness, but no music, no laughter, just existence, empty, perfect, controlled. Second vision, a world burned black and gold, machines and ruins, people fighting over what little survives. But they scream, they cry, they live, they fail, they choose. Then the hollow shows me the final one. The one that hasn't happened yet. Earth reborn. Not clean, not pure, but scarred. Loud. Loud in every way. A planet that remembers. A species that never shuts up. Sending signals into every corner of the universe, not to ask for help, but to tell stories. To warn. To remind. To defy. I open my eyes. No more visions. No more transmissions. The hollow has shown its hand, and now it waits for ours. I return to the council. Only 6 members now. Some want to take the hollow's offer, to live in stillness. Perfect, sterile, preserved like a museum exhibit that never ages or breaks. Others want to flee. Send what's left of humanity into deep space, and hope the hollow forgets us. Me? I want to finish what we started. This isn't a threat, I tell them. It's permission. They stare. If we want silence, it'll give us peace. If we want fire, it'll give us war. But if we want meaning, I lean forward, then we have to earn it. So we vote. Unanimous, we choose to speak. In the days that follow, Earth changes. We dig out old satellites, repair the deep sky relays. We restart our signals, not as pleas, but as statements. We send music, art, data, war footage, everything. We tell the stars what happened here, not for glory, not for help, but so someone out there knows, we survived. And we are dangerous. On the 15th day, the hollow begins to fade. Its shape dissolves. Its mass fractures into dust, black particles rising into space like ash. But before it disappears completely, it sends back one final pulse. A message burned into the clouds above every major zone. A single word, remain. And then it's gone. I sit beneath the sky that night for the first time in years, and I see stars again. Clear, untouched, no shadows, no screams, just silence. But not the hollows kind. Ours. The kind we choose before the next scream. Caleb's body is buried beneath the tower where we launched the fifth echo. No grave marker, just a carved phrase in the wall nearby. He taught the void to listen. Earth will never be the same. The harvesters are dead. The watchers are silent. The galaxy is still spinning. But now, it knows we're here, and it knows better. This wasn't a war story. This was a warning, a funeral, a baptism, a scar across the stars that will never fade. We weren't meant to survive. But we did. And in doing so, we became something else. Not gods, not monsters. Just the species that refused to be quiet.